Daniel Pemberton's score, man. Just, what a god. Now, first things first, when it comes to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I loved it. I thought it was a great film. I love watching it. I've seen it twice now. I can't wait to see it a third time. It's a great film. But at the end of the day, I think Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is just a better film. It's simpler and it's tighter. Across the Spider-Verse to me just feels a tad bit too long. Like, I feel like you could shave off like 5 minutes if you got rid of some of the more sarcastic quips. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Phil Lord and Chris Miller's writing style, but at the end of the day, they do get a bit too into their quips and their sarcastic remarks, and I feel like there are some bits that I'm just like, you don't need that line. You could just like get rid of it. It'd be fine. I mean, the lines are funny, you just don't entirely need every single one of them. Also, the film kind of has a dead man's chest problem in the sense of that when it comes to dead man's chest, it's a very good film and I love that film, but also it doesn't really have like an amazing ending. It has like a cliffhanger ending where it's like, yep, get ready for At World's End because it's a 2-part story, and Across the Spider-Verse to me feels exactly like that. Albeit, it's a bit neater than Dead Man's Chest ending because, like, the main characters of Across the Spider-Verse have character arcs and they're all fairly complete. It's just that it has, like, a couple of threads that leave it hanging for, yeah, we need to finish this off in the third part. Also, let's just pray that Beyond the Spider-Verse is a better film than Pirates of the Caribbean At World's End, because, don't get me wrong, as much as I love the ending to Pirates of the Caribbean At World's End, that film is just overly complicated for no reason and just really, really long. But anyways, aside from those little issues with Across the Spider-Verse, I absolutely loved this film. This film is a visual feast for the eyes. The animation is gorgeous. The narrative of this film is great. The character work done in this film is great. It's a very interesting setup for a great 2-parter. Because again, if they nail the ending to this, the Spider-Verse trilogy will be one of the best trilogies ever made. Specifically, probably the best comic book trilogy ever made. And like, one of the things I just absolutely adore about this franchise is that this one, similar to the first one, is a comic book film made by comic book fans. And it's kind of funny now because I've been seeing people compare this film to No Way Home, and at the end of the day, No Way Home, whilst I love it, it has so many plot holes, so many gaps, where you're just like, come on, like, did you actually watch the previous films, or like, did you not like realize what you're writing was a mistake? I acknowledge those problems in No Way Home, but that doesn't take away my enjoyment of that film. But also at the end of the day, you can tell that that film was just paying homage to the Spider-Man films. When it comes to Across the Spider-Verse, this thing pays homage to everything, and you can tell that they absolutely love and adore everything, but also, they pay respect to it because they actually know what they're talking about. They aren't just saying random references to previous things, then leaving massive gaps and plot holes. Like, the fan service in this film makes sense. Also, it just pays respect and homage to Spider-Man across all mediums: comics, cartoons, TV shows, movies. You can tell that the people making this film love just Spider-Man. And look, this film isn't entirely a cameo-centric movie, but the cameos are there, and for the most part, they don't really show up until like midway through the second act, I guess. Like, it's not like a, hey, look, cameo. They do get a bit too self-indulgent at times, namely with Donald Glover's The Prowler, because whilst that's a cool cameo, they do linger on him for like way too long. It's just like, what are you doing? Like, you're holding on for too long now, you can cut. That being said, a lot of the cameos here do serve a purpose for the most part. Though granted, they do get a bit too self-indulgent with the Spectacular Spider-Man cameo, just because, I mean, I can't blame them for it. It's Josh Keaton. Josh Keaton is the best interpretation of Spider-Man. Spectacular Spider-Man is like the best adaptation of the character, and Josh Keaton is probably the best Spider-Man voice actor. But they give him like 2 major speaking lines, and to be fair, I'm glad it's him. It doesn't detract from the fact that it is Spectacular Spider-Man saying those lines, because it could have been any Spider-Man saying that line. But because it's Josh Keaton, I loved it. It's so good. I kind of also love that the film treats him as like one of the best interpretations of Spider-Man, because it shows like the death of Captain Stacy's. We see Andrew Garfield from Amazing Spider-Man 1, and we see like, you know, comic stuff, all that kind of stuff. And then it shows Spectacular Spider-Man with what I'm assuming is Spectacular Spider-Man George Stacy. And it's like, oh damn, yeah, they really do love this like character, because in many ways they kind of treat him like 616 Spider-Man, though he isn't. Like, again, did it need to be Josh Keaton as Spectacular Spider-Man? No. But the filmmakers know that the Spider-Man fans love and adore Josh Keaton, so they paid respect and homage to him. And again, that moment could have worked with any other Spider-Man, but they chose to make it Josh Keaton because, you know, Spectacular Spider-Man, Josh Keaton is the GOAT. Here's hoping that in Beyond the Spider-Verse we get Christopher Daniel Barnes to show up as like either animated Spider-Man or Edge of Time 2099, just because Christopher Daniel Barnes is like one of the GOATs. Again, I said this in my Into the Spider-Verse review, but the Mount Rushmore of Spider-Man voice actors is Josh Keaton, Christopher Daniel Barnes, and now Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker. Shameik Moore once again kills it as Miles Morales. He is my favorite interpretation of the character because, comic book Miles is fine, but like Shameik Moore brings such an energy, and the writers make Miles such a character. There's such a youthful energy and likability to him. He's great. He's the best Miles Morales. The new suit he wears in the film is fine. Like, I like that Miles designed it, but I don't know. I kind of wish that he kept or kind of like modified the one from the first film and made it just look a bit, you know, more sleek and modern. Because again, I like the red bands on the Miles Morales suit, and this suit is like, you know, a lot of black, and then obviously they make the bleeding red from the armpit jokes thing. But yeah, I kind of wish he kept the old suit. Like, it's fine, and I like the way that it lights under, like, you know, the lighting and the texture and all that. It's cool. I just kind of wish he kept the old one. Also, I absolutely love and adore the way he delivers this line.
Everyone keeps telling me how my story is supposed to go. Nah. I'm gonna do my own thing.
It's so good. It's like what I said about his performance in the first one, where he's able to keep that youthful energy whilst also being able to be incredibly commanding and powerful. Like, I think he does that much better than Tom Holland did in the Homecoming trilogy, because to me, I mean, he gets it right in No Way Home. Tom Holland, this is not me bashing on Tom Holland, but to me, when it comes to Tom Holland, especially in Homecoming and Far From Home, I never really bought him being angry. For the most part, he was always this boyish, happy-go-lucky with this, like, crazy, like, boyish, childlike energy. But then when things hit the fan, I never really bought that, yeah, he can go angry, he can go dark. He does that in No Way Home, but in Homecoming and in Far From Home, I never really bought it, especially going back and looking at them. At the time, I was blinded by recency bias. I love Tom Holland, and I do like Tom Holland a lot as a performer. It's just that, to me, he never really got the Peter Parkerishness right until No Way Home. Also, the first third of this film that focuses on Miles Morales balancing his superhero life with his everyday life is great. It's classic Spider-Man stuff. That's what I've wanted to see. This movie just feels like classic Spider-Man, whilst also delving into the more modern Spider-Verse-esque storylines. I also just love his family dynamic. Like, his parents are wonderful people, and I love his dynamic with them, and I like the way that him being Spider-Man and not being able to tell them that he's Spider-Man is putting a stress and strain on their relationship. Like, the grounded joke was hilarious. It also just sets up an incredibly strong narrative thread for the next film, because whilst Miles is trapped in another dimension, he has to get back to his dimension and then, you know, fix the relationship with his parents. He has to tell them that he's Spider-Man, but also, does he save his dad? Does he not save his dad? Is him, like, trying to interfere with saving his dad going to result in something bad happening? Because I don't see how at the end of the day, at the end of this trilogy, Miles Morales is going to win and be happy. What would be even darker, actually, and this would be taking a page out of the Flash Season 1's book, is Miles has to literally watch his dad die. He has to allow himself to let his dad die. That would be heartbreaking if that happened. Again, good storytelling, good character conflicts. This is what filmmaking's all about. Hailee Steinfeld as Spider-Gwen is still amazing. She's so good. The thing that I find funny, though, about the character of Spider-Gwen is how she's technically Gwen Stacy, but the character of Spider-Gwen I've never really associated as, like, the 616 Gwen Stacy. Like, to me, they're, like, two separate characters, if that makes any sense. Like, Spider-Gwen is just so radically different to Gwen Stacy, the classic Gwen Stacy, where I'm just like, they're really the same character? And for the most part, she is essentially the co-lead of this film, and I love that the film opens and it delves into the backstory of Spider-Gwen, because they really do brush past that and into the Spider-Verse. It's like, they address it, but then they're just like, we just quickly get past that. And I like how in this film, they focus on it. They show us Peter Parker, played by Jack Quaid, which I think is really cool, transform into the Lizard, and they do that whole thing. It's really good stuff, and I love how the beginning of the film sets up her whole arc for the rest of the film, which is to move away from being the lone wolf thing and basically assemble her new band. I also love the art style of her world, and I love how the animators were just like, yep, her comic book covers, the Alias, you know, watercolor style thing. We're going to basically make that the art style of her world with all the vibrant blues and pinks and purples and whites. It's so good. Her relationship with Miles is also very sweet, and I do want them to be together, but I know that by the end of the trilogy, they can't be together. It's a relationship that's doomed to fail, which again makes it incredibly powerful. The writing, man. God damn it, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, they're geniuses. Now we get on to Oscar Isaac as Miguel O Hara, Spider-Man 2099. Oscar Isaac, to me, is perfect casting as Miguel O Hara. Oscar Isaac should never have been Moon Knight. He should never have been Apocalypse. Oscar Isaac was born to play Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099. I would have no problem with Oscar Isaac playing Miguel O'Hara in live action because he was born to play that character. You look at the character from the comics and the video games, and you look at Oscar Isaac, they are one and the same. He was born for this role. In fact, what Sony should be doing, instead of making these dumb Venomverse, Morbius, Kraven the Hunter films, they should be making the variant Spider-Man films. They should have made 2099. They should have made Spider-Gwen. They should have made Silk. Why haven't they done this already? Blade Runner meets Spider-Man, it would be an amazing concept and would make a fair decent amount of money. Okay, maybe not make it too much like Blade Runner, just because like Blade Runner is a very stunning franchise, but it's not the most commercially accessible thing ever. Like, general audiences don't like those movies, even though they're very well made movies. They're just, they're kind of boring. The original Blade Runner, yeah, I don't like, but do not take this as me dissing on Blade Runner 2049. I think that movie is great. It's written very well. I love the themes and ideas of that movie. Roger Deakins is a god. Denis Villeneuve is ma compagne, mon ami. J'adore Denis Villeneuve. It's a very boring film, though. Maybe that's a story for another time. But anyways, back to Spider-Verse. The thing that I really like about Miguel O Hara is that he's not the villain of the film. He's more just like an antagonist. But also his antagonistic role is not one out of hatred or jealousy. He's not a villain. He's just trying to stop Miles from doing something catastrophic to the multiverse. Like, there's this whole ethical debate of, like, should Miles go and save his parents now that he knows the information? Is it right for him to do that? Or is Miles going to make everything worse by ruining the multiverse and all that kind of stuff? Because the thing is, Miguel isn't wrong. But what he's also trying to do is look out for Miles because he knows the pain that Miles will go through if he tries to fix it, and eventually his parents would die or something. But because Miguel has experienced something similar to Miles, that being the erasure of his daughter, he knows what it would be like for Miles to do this and the consequences and the pain that it would bring him. But because Miguel is being an asshole about it, he is seen to be the antagonist. Because at the end of the day, Miguel is right. Miles should not try and interfere and save his dad in a sense because it would like blow a hole in the multiverse. But then also there's the human element of being like, yeah, no, you have to. You can't just like stand there and like let things like that happen. One of the things that I do want to see in Beyond the Spider-Verse, and I think we'll get it seeing as how this film opened with the backstory of Gwen Stacy, I want to see the backstory of Miguel O Hara, because Miguel O Hara is kind of different to the other Spider-Men in the sense of that he genetically engineered himself to be Spider-Man. He experimented on a spider in Alchemax, and then he gave himself spider powers. And if I'm remembering this correctly, he also doesn't have a spider sense because he's got different spider powers to the rest of them. I'd also like to see a bit more of a softer side to him because although his characterization is pretty good, he's a bit too aggressive in the sense of that the Spider-Man 2099 I'm used to is the one from Edge of Time, the one that's portrayed by Christopher Daniel Barnes, who is a legend. And I like his characterization in that because he is aggressive and more edgier than Peter Parker, but he's a bit softer as well compared to Miguel in this film. Like, Miguel in this film is like way too harsh. Also, a tiny nerdy fanboy detail that I love is that he says shock as a swear word. He's like, what the shocking hell is this? It's so good. I want him to say it more, and hopefully he says it more in Beyond the Spider-Verse, but just hearing him say that put a smile to my face, man. Like, come on, this is a Spider-Man film made for Spider-Man fans. Do you know what I did want more of in this film, though? Peter B. Parker, because I said it before, Jake Johnson's Peter B. Parker is essentially the most purest form of Peter Parker we've gotten, for the most part. And he's really cool when he shows up in this film, and I love some of the stuff he has and the interactions he has with Miles. Like, I love the scene where he's talking to Miles and he's like, the reason why I had Mayday was because of you, and I hope that when she grows up, she will be similar to you because you're a great kid and I missed you. It's good stuff. But also in this film, he's kind of just here to be comedic relief. Like, he was comedic relief in the last film as well, but there's a bit more depth and humanity in the sense of, like, he was there to, like, be an impactful leader. And here, he's, like, here with Mayday, and he's fun, and he's, like, airy, and they're all just like, you're a terrible mentor, but he's actually not, because he's actually, like, comic book Spider-Man, he's a good mentor. But I don't know, I kind of wish he had a bit more emotional depth in this film, because let's get on to the elephant in the room, that being, he keeps bringing his baby, Mayday Parker, into dangerous situations, and it's like, I know she has spider powers, but why does he keep doing that? Like, that's child endangerment, right? But then also, I don't think he knew that there was going to be, like, a big scuffle with the spider people, but then also, why did he bring her at the end of the film to go save Miles? Like, huh? I did see an interesting interpretation of that being Peter thinks that Mayday would be more safer around him because he can protect her, which I think would be cool, but I kind of wish the film delved into that and explained that a bit more, just because he does look very irresponsible bringing in a baby into a fight. Also, I need him to get rid of the pink bathrobe, not because it's unmasculine or whatever. He looks cool in it. I just, like, want Spider-Man to be Spider-Man, not walking around in, like, a bathrobe. I just want Spider-Man. I want him to put on the suit properly, and I want him to be sick, because, again, he is Peter Parker, basically. He's, like, 616B, I think, is what they said in this film. Which, because, I mean, again, he is basically comic book Spider-Man. And just, I want to see Peter Parker, like, in action doing cool Peter Parker things. Because at the end of the day, Peter Parker is Spider-Man for me, right? Okay? As much as I love Miles, as much as I love Miguel, as much as I love all the other Spider-Man variants, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and I want to see him done justice. And I like him a lot in this movie. Jake Johnson, again, delivers a great performance. It's just that the characterization of him in this one is just that he's a bit more aloof than I would have preferred, because he's aloof in the first one, but there was also like a seriousness, just like, yeah, he is going to get there to the point, he's going to do the Peter Parker self-sacrificial thing. This one he's kind of just like, yeah, I'm here, I'm a dad, look at how great my baby is, and it's like, I need a bit more of that hard edge for him in the next one. Also, another standout was Daniel Kaluuya as Spider-Punk. I loved his characterization in this, because Spider-Punk is a character I've seen, but like I've never really been like, yeah, I love that character, he's great. I've never really cared much for him. He's always been a Spider-Man suit, and that's kind of it. Daniel Kaluuya, the way he characterizes him is awesome. He makes him kind of like a 1970s Sex Pistols-esque punk. It's really cool stuff. You know, he's very anti-establishment, he doesn't believe in the rules, all that kind of stuff, and he teaches Miles all these little things, just like, yeah, use your web blast like with the palm so you can get out of this situation. And when he finds out the big conundrum of that being that the Spider Society is trying to stop Miles from saving his dad, he's like, no, that's wrong. I ain't all for that. So he gives Gwen the special, you know, time jumping dimensional watch thing that he made, and he's also like teaching Miles like specific things to like get him out of situations so he can succeed in saving his dad. Now getting on to the big bad, the arch nemesis of the film, the Spot. The Spot has always been a dumb, fun character. And I love how the film treats him as such until they don't, because by the end of the film, they've made the Spot incredibly menacing. Like, the Spot was always like, oh wow, he can like create little spot portals and like you go through the portals. Oh, isn't that fun and silly? He's a villain of the week. And I love how this film kind of like escalates it and delves into that, because one of the cool things that we as comic book fans tend to do is overthink and over-speculate about powers. For example, when you talk about the Flash is one of the most insanely overpowered superheroes when you really put it down to it, because scientifically, he's impossible. The Flash can move at the speed of light, so we technically wouldn't be able to actually see the Flash moving around doing things. He literally would just be like blinking all over the place. And they do show that a bit in the Snyder Cut actually, which I do like. That I think is a really cool visual. You know when like the rubble's falling and then he's like pinging around, just like, and you see little like fragments of like Ezra Miller's like Flash running around. It's cool. And in this film, they basically did that with the Spot. The Spot starts off as the goofy villain of the week, similar to like Paul Giamatti's Rhino in Amazing Spider-Man 2, or the stuff you would see in like Spider-Man cartoons, but like, oh look, Spider-Man's fighting the Lizard, or he's fighting Kraven. And then as the film progresses, as Miles doesn't take him seriously, the Spot kind of just like mentally breaks, because he's just like, oh, no one respects me, I'm a joke, so I'm just gonna be really evil and I'm gonna destroy Miles's entire world because he destroyed my entire world, and now I'm gonna be evil and just ruin everything. Again, the focus on the Spot being the bad guy. This is a goofy villain of the week character, and they've made him incredibly terrifying by the end. And what's even funnier is that they made his origin partly goofy, because in the first film, Miles Morales throws a bagel at a scientist. In this film, they follow up on that and they go, yeah, that scientist was actually the Spot. Like, they make something so goofy, so kind of like meaningful in a sense, because the Spot is a joke character, right? Let's compare this to Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio in Far From Home. Spider-Man Far From Home makes Mysterio pretty compelling until they do the big reveal of that Tony Stark relabeled his, genius machine and called it Bath. That right there is a stupid, dumb retcon, because why? What is the purpose? They made Mysterio look fairly cool and fairly competent, and then they just go, yeah, I'm angry at Tony Stark because he ruined my life's work and called it Bath. I know there's more like subtle complexities to it in Far From Home, but at the end of the day, that kind of just is like this simplification of his arc. Is like, oh, he doesn't like Tony Stark because he took all my credit and relabeled my great invention Bath. Like, I get it. I know he's mentally unhinged and all that kind of stuff, and he wants to like prove that superheroes don't need to exist. I get that. But at the end of the day, they downplayed the coolness of his Mysterio because they were just like, oh, we need a cheap joke. The Spot in this film originates from a cheap joke, but then as the film progresses and the stakes get higher, they make the Spot more menacing and darker and evil. Like, say Far From Home opened and it did the whole Bath reveal thing, then as the film progresses and we see Mysterio and we learn more about him, it would have been more impactful because, oh yeah, it starts off with the Bath thing. But then as the film progresses and we see him try to be the fake hero, but then also behind the scenes we see him like snapping and going more psychotic, that would have worked better. That would have been more effective. But it's not, because they kind of just like model all the cool Mysterio stuff and then just go, ha, Bath! Anyways, yeah, that's my little Far From Home rant. The Spot's cool. They made the Spot cool, which is great. Now, Across the Spider-Verse, similar to Into the Spider-Verse, is incredibly funny. I talked about the humor earlier on, how I feel like, there are a couple of jokes that go on for a bit too long, or like you could have cut like a couple of like the snide, quippy lines. Other than that, though, the jokes in this movie are great, and I love the running jokes they continued from the first one into this one. The film opens once again with the Comics Code Authority stamp, which again is just an elite tier joke. The Banksy joke returns, which I thought was great, like when Spider-Gwen is fighting Vulture in the art museum, and like as he's like flying around, glitching and all that kind of stuff, he's like ruining the art and making all this weird stuff, and then someone's just like, yeah, that's definitely a Banksy. It's so good. And then like I just mentioned, Miles throwing the bagel at the guy, paying off being the spot. That's crazy. That's so good. Now let's talk about the ending, because I think the ending to this film is great. The idea that Miles Morales gets sent back to the wrong universe is great, because they reveal in this film that the spider that bit him was actually from Earth 42, which is such a good retcon. I don't know if it's a retcon if they had this plan from the beginning, but in the first Spider-Verse film, when Miles gets bitten by the spider glitches. So in that film, I just thought, oh, it's only glitching because it's near the particle collider thing. Nah. Unless like Phil Lord and Chris Miller are really good at retconning, if they had this planned out from the beginning, they are geniuses. But then yeah, so when Miles tries to sneak out of the big spider society back home to his universe, the DNA reader machine thing reads his DNA as Earth 42, because that's where the spider came from. And it's funny, because when I was watching it, I was like, no. In the first Spider-Verse film, they said Miles is from 1610, and in this film, it opens with a title card saying Miles Morales, Earth 1610. I kind of wrote it off as like an inconsistency on the writers. I was like, oh fine, they're using Far From Home, No Way Home logic, where it's just like, the information doesn't matter, it's just a crappy retcon. Then all of a sudden, they literally paid off as just like, no, yeah, he is in the wrong universe because he's glitching about, and you're like, oh. And the thing that clued me onto the wrong universe thing, aside from the designation number, was how when Miles goes to Earth 42, the animation style is like slightly different. It was more darker, and like subconsciously I was sitting there just going like, wait, the animation's different. I don't think, is he in the right universe? Like, something's up. And then when they do the big reveal that Miles' dad is dead, Miles' mom is, you know, a single parent providing for Miles, possibly in a relationship with Uncle Aaron, maybe, or Uncle Aaron's just a big scary guy, and Uncle Aaron's still alive, and then we find out that Miles Morales of that universe is the Prowler. So good. It's so good. That is how you do an ending. That is like Back to the Future 2 level of like endings. It's so good. Like again, the film's just so well written that they set this up and it feels organic and natural, and just I can't wait to see how this pays off in Beyond the Spider-Verse. Like I said, if they nail the ending, then the Spider-Verse trilogy will be one of the best comic book trilogies ever made, and possibly one of the best film trilogies ever made. Also, just want to shout out Daniel Pemberton. His score for this film is incredible. The Spider-Man theme, the 2099 theme. Apparently that's an homage to the Spider-Man Unlimited cartoon. Now, I never watched that cartoon, but I watched the intro on YouTube, and then I listened to the 2099 theme. And hearing Daniel Pemberton take influence from that theme and implement that into 2099, because apparently Unlimited was supposed to be a 2099 show or whatever, that's so cool. Spider-Gwen's new theme, the kind of like light fluttering, is really cool. Mixed in with the drums. The drums are so cool, man. Like the ending song, right? The one that like plays as the film wraps up, and like, you know, as Gwen assembles the team and you see Spider-Man Noir and Spider-Ham and Penny and all that kind of stuff. It's so good, man. Where it's like, the drum beat's incredible. It's so good. Daniel Pemberton is a god. This might be my favorite Spider-Man theme. You know, the dun dun dun. I love it so much. It's so... I love it. But to wrap things up, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was insane. I loved it. Although I don't think it's as good as Into the Spider-Verse, it's still a great film with a great story, great characters, great animation. It's phenomenal. And the thing that will be interesting is to see how well this ages. And I think a big factor in that is how good Beyond the Spider-Verse is, because if Beyond the Spider-Verse is great, it's just as good as these two, and nails the ending, then again, the Spider-Verse trilogy will be one of the best trilogies ever made. And in turn, it will also elevate Across the Spider-Verse as well, because again, this is kind of like half a story-ish. Although a lot of the main characters wrap up certain character arcs, there is also just the hanging thread of like Miles is trapped in a different universe and they're gonna go save him. It is literally the cliffhanger to Dead Man's Chest, but, you know, Spider-Man related. But anyways, those are just my thoughts on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. What do you guys think? Did you guys like it? Did you guys love it? Did you guys hate it? I would be baffled if someone said they hated this film. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like, subscribe on social media, all that good stuff. Until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.